Okay, we'll start tonight's Olivet's Planning Community Development Commission for June 15th to order. Thanks for everybody being here. We appreciate it. Will you please call the roll?
Sure.
Thank you.
Member Tim Spiegel-Glass.
Here.
Member Sam Wall.
Present.
Member Daniel Rosenberg.
Present.
Member Brian Lewis, present. Vice Chairman Carol Wagner
Present.
and Chairman Robert Trigal.
Present. Let it also be known.
Oh, sorry. Secretary Jody Rich.
Absent. Let it also be known that our city council liaison, Councilmember Missy Waldman's in attendance, as well as our staff liaison, staff liaisons, Carlos Trejo, the director of Olivet's Planning and Community Development Department. I do not see Dawn.
No,
so-
she's out tonight.
And am I missing anyone?
Nope.
All right,
got
so you're
everybody.
going solo on this
Yes.
one. All right, good, good.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, thanks for everybody being in attendance. Just to let you know about kind of the procedures of how we go about things. With each agenda item, there's typically a staff report. He'll go over through that report. There'll be a time for commission members to ask questions with staff about that. Typically, after that, we bring on the petitioner, kind of review everything. And there'll be some discussions back and forth. And then if there's public comments for anything that's on that specific agenda item, we'll call for public comments on that. If you have public comments that are not related to anything on the agenda item, we'll call that up in the beginning. Okay. We do ask that everybody who does come before the podium, either as the petitioner or, any public comments, to state their name and address for the record. And also there's a little switch there that turns on the mic. It should say something like talk on there. Click that and you'll see the red light light up. It's better because that way everything can be recorded as well as be played for anybody who's watching via Zoom. Okay. We do ask any public comments, whether they're related to just general public comments or an agenda item, to be no more than 3 minutes, to be respectful of everybody's time, and to make sure we get everybody's opinion heard. Okay. That being said, Carlos, did I miss anything?
No, sir. I think
Oh,
you got everything covered.
I did miss one thing. For the Zoom attendees, if you have a public comment or a comment, please, there should be an icon that says to raise your hand. And when you do that, Carlos will typically at the right time, he'll bring you up onto the panel. We do ask you that you have your video on as well as the microphone on. By default, those are not on. So it helps save us time. If you can be on the lookout for that to make sure before you start speaking. Okay, good, good. Carlos, did I miss anything now?
No, I think you got it all covered. Thank you, sir.
All right, good, good. So we'll move on to item 3, which is the comprehensive plan update.
Just want to update everybody regarding the city working on its comprehensive plan. We're updating our comprehensive plan. The last major update was in 2006, and then we've had some subsequent amendments. This is an opportunity to establish or set the city's vision for land use development in the future. So, it helps us prioritize our priorities, our policies that would help in terms of how we evaluate and review developments throughout the community, both residential and commercial. We had a community engagement meeting in May, which was very well attended in there. To date, we've had over 313 participants take survey number 1. That survey will be open till the end of, till June 23rd. So next Friday. We encourage commission members to tell your friends, tell your neighbors, and anybody here in the audience to be active regarding the survey. What we've seen in the survey results has been a very good participation rate. But when we start breaking down the surveys, we see some deficiencies that we'd like to try to get addressed. One is there's more respondents south of Olive Boulevard, which is always difficult to engage. Now it could be it's slightly below the proportion of population in there, so it's not as bad as in there. I think Shockey and Rise have done a really good job of trying to engage both sides of the community. 20 to 30-year-olds, very low response rate, but that's typical. And they're also one of our lower population rates in there. And we've seen Black and Asians below their normal average as a percentage of our community. So we're working on those, and we'll probably start looking at ways to reach out and do some type of focus groups or engagements with specific aspects of it. Again, the survey is available. You can register yourself as a participant to be kept up to speed with all the activities that are taking place. And secondly, the advisory committee is scheduled to meet in July and start working and establishing a draft vision and getting into the nuts and bolts of the plan itself. And then sometime in August, September, I think we'll have another community meeting to discuss where we are within that draft and such. Several staff members out.
Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, Carlos, when you said draft vision, did you mean draft vision statement or?
That is correct. Mhm.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Several members will be out next Tuesday at Olivet Night Out on June 20th. Engaging in various subdivisions. I think we have 20 subdivisions that have signed up in there. So we'll be distributing some material, have some surveys available. And again, the next advisory committee is scheduled for July 13th. Chairman, if there's anything you want to add, or if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
No, I think you covered a lot, but just another encouragement. This is a chance to, get your voice out and kind of help guide us, for the next, 15 to 20 years as we go. So it definitely helps to get the input from everybody out there. So definitely look into it. I know it takes a little bit of time. Surveys are good though. They don't take too much time. And they're well crafted to get the point across and to do it fast and efficient. Okay. And there's several surveys. So just because you've done one doesn't mean you've done them all. So, the more you do, the better it will be. Okay. No further questions on that. We'll move on to public comments. These are general public comments for items that are not on the agenda item. I see a hand raised. Go ahead. Remember to state your name, and address for the record.
There we go. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Lapp. I live at 515 Dealman Road, which is the second house north of Old Bonham on the west side. On my west property line, 4 feet away, is the retaining wall for the premier subdivision in Olivet, Birdie Lane. Okay. I was here over Zoom in 2020. Carlos will remember. We talked all about they're seeking a permit for development. You talked about making sure a house on the corner was turned appropriately. We were all worried about water. I was worried about landscaping, and they made a promise. They said, Mark, you can choose the color of the brick. I don't care about the color of the brick, but I expected something to soften the wall. Maybe every few feet, some bushes or trees that wouldn't injure the wall. And they promised yes. And 2 days ago was the first time I heard from Mr. Freeman, and he is going to come and meet me on next Tuesday morning at 9. And I hope the city will be there by me. Okay, I hope Carlos can attend, because I think the city should expect that developer to come through with their promise and present to you a landscaping plan. And I'm happy to discuss what it looks like to again soften that wall, either plantings, plantings on top of the wall, plantings in front of the wall, and a maintenance schedule. And you can see they haven't taken care of it at all. You can also see damage to Mr. Green's garage. He's the property to the north of me. That hasn't been addressed either. So again, this is the premier subdivision. I'm proud of it. I'm thrilled that the land was developed behind me. But I want the promise from this committee that you'll be here with me and protect me so that we can have something nice to look at, since I have a 13-foot wall that I'm now looking at. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it.
Right, thank
And we'll try to encourage what we can do.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Carla, any other public and anybody else? Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, but yeah, go ahead. I was looking in the left or the
Public,
south.
because you pulled it off the
We'll go off the agenda for tonight. Good evening. My name is Kent Bach. I live at 700 North Price Road. I want to speak tonight about the intention of Olivet to remove the.
Sir, could you pick the mic up and speak a little louder so me and the rest can hear you?
My apologies.
That's okay, sir. Thank you.
I want to speak to you about the intention of Olivet to remove the containment and enforcement of the bamboo resolution. And I guess I want to start with saying, in light of Olivet's commitment to environmental sustainability, I'm struggling to see how repealing the requirement for bamboo owners to properly contain and manage their bamboo benefits the Olivet community. By repealing the requirement for containment of bamboo, Olivet is sanctioning the unmitigated growth of uncontained, unmanaged bamboo that tears through hedges, garden beds, walkways, and lawns, destroying not only indigenous species, but literally everything in its wake. I'm really struggling to see how this is a good idea. Ladue, in comparison, just recently passed a bill that tightened up their bamboo ordinance, specifically in the areas of containment and penalties. Ladue clearly understands that the threat of running bamboo to both private and public property, and they affirm that it's the responsibility of the bamboo owners. And I would like to propose that rather than repeal the section of ordinance that absolves bamboo owners of all responsibility for managing their bamboo, that instead you follow Ladue's lead and include in all of its ordinance clear and unambiguous language as to what constitutes containment. Further, as in the case of Ladue, specifying specific enforcement penalties will remove any potential ambiguity as to all of its willingness to enforce. Removing the ordinance is not a good solution. It has the unintended consequences of giving irresponsible parties a free ticket to allow their bamboo to grow unintended, unmitigated, and out of control. Furthermore, there's another unintended consequence. Stuff like this gets out. You pull this and say you're not going to enforce codes. There are going to be other people who say, wow, all I have to do is stand up to Olivet and I can break the code because they're not going to do anything for it. So I please ask you to consider your future path on the bamboo ordinance. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it.
And Chairman,
Yeah.
I'll note that we'll defer discussion regarding the amendments to the urban agriculture, which includes the bamboo regulations. We did talk with the city attorney Martin, and he'll probably be either in our second meeting in July, which would be July 20th, or the first meeting in August. In there, and I think that is the 4th in there. So we'll make sure we have it properly posted and that information out or available. It'll be either July 20th or August 3rd in there, where the commission will take up discussion and have the city attorney there too.
Very good.
Okay,
Sounds great.
thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? Go ahead.
Stephanie Todd, 7 Heather Hill Lane. So, I made comments a few months ago about trying to save trees when developers, are redeveloping a lot. And it seemed like you were receptive to the idea. And I understand it's a difficult problem and we're not going to save every tree. But I would like to propose that I look into the issue and come back on August 3rd with like a presentation to you guys with some potential solutions, and then you can discuss it. But I'd like to research the idea and throw it out. I mean, and then let you know what I find. I was thinking August 3rd would give me enough time, and it would give you guys some time because I know there's 4th of July and everything in there. So
I'm not opposed to it, but I kind of would love to see what the presentation is.
We have a new city manager coming in. Let's let the new city manager come in and let's have a conversation about what you want. Okay?
Yeah.
So after
yeah,
August 7th,
I was
I
just
think-
thinking like a 10-15 minute.
we have a new city manager coming in. Let's let her begin. We can take your thoughts to the city manager. We have meetings with the mayor and pro tem. I want the new city manager here first. We're that close. Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
sure.
that's fine, but
Yeah.
would like to see what she. puts
Absolutely.
together. Yeah,
I'm not
So-
disputing what she wants.
Yeah, I guess I thought it was PCDC's decision if I present or not the city manager's decision if I present or not.
This is a city board. And there are things that have to come through the city council to the board, some are not. I am asking what you brought and what you've brought to the city in the past, they're good things. We're this close to a new city manager. I would like the city manager to be a part of these types of situations when people want to bring things to commissions. That's all I'm asking. Barb's not here. I know you would have approached her, and that's all I want is the common courtesy with the new city manager being a part. Okay?
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
trying to push you away. Okay? Let's be
No, I
respectful.
guess
Yeah.
I take offense at that I didn't like, I really liked Barb and got along with her really well.
No, and that's not my point here. My point is you want to bring something here. I'm not disputing that. I'm saying we're this close to our new city manager starting. Let's let her become and be a part of this. That's all I'm saying. Just let her get involved. Let's her be a part. Bring it to her. And let's just, it's a new city manager.
No,
That's
and that's
all.
fine. I just
Okay.
don't like the derogatory comment about my relationship with Barb.
Oh, no, I said it was a
Like-
good relationship. If you misunderstood me,
Oh,
please. I said it was
thought
a
you
good,
said I
real.
would
Oh, no, 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 no,
Barb.
no, no.
So-
Please, no, no. I said it was
Yeah,
a
I
good,
thought-
no.
We're buddies.
No, it was a good relationship. We had a good relationship, and that's what I want as we go forward
Okay.
with our new city manager.
Alright.
If that, I apologize if you misunderstood, but no, you had everyone had a good relationship with Sondag.
Okay.
all right, well, we'll go ahead and do the research because it'd be beneficial. And then we'll work with the city manager to
Okay.
kind of see, what you have and.
Yeah, and then, because I'll
Presentation.
just present it, and then you guys,
Yeah.
then it's up for discussion. You can talk about it.
Yeah, that
Let
sounds
me know.
good. All right, thanks, Stefan. Okay, I saw another hand raised. Go ahead.
I'm having difficulty sending it to my email, so because or I can even pass. my laptop.
Yeah, I don't think, it won't come out on Zoom.
It won't come out.
Maybe if you could bring it up here and we'll try to make sure we don't. Yeah, make sure you state your name and address. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, could everybody speak up? I'm having trouble hearing.
Oh, sorry, Carol.
My name is Mona Cafoi and I reside on 6 Cherry Lane. I am here to speak for the trees. When I first into this neighborhood, I viewed the ranch-style home across from mine as an embarrassment compared to the bigger, more developed houses. But it was only when I got older that I realized this home was a home for squirrels, owls, bats, hummingbirds, and butterflies. The prior owner of this house was Doris Pree, a woman who ultimately passed, but her genuine character can still be felt through her garden. The houses surrounding Doris's house, even once including mine, have pristine lawns maintained by gas-guzzling lawn equipment, fertilizers that run off into our local streams, and sanitized by pesticides that kill off many helpful little creatures. It is only Doris's home that lives with nature and not against it. I have changed from being a child who only cared about what her neighborhood looked like to now an adult who sees the true value of the beauty of trees that even temporary pleasures cannot hide. After this loving family moved out of their recently constructed home on 2 Cherry Lane that was deemed not good enough to 7 Cherry Lane, I became heartbroken that they would construct another McMansion in our neighborhood. Once looking at their plans, it became clear that the trees were not at all being considered. The trees are older than this neighborhood and older than the people in this room. So who are we to cut down trees that simply they get in our way? Temporary pleasures such as constructing a pool house are less important than preserving these trees that benefit the entire neighborhood. It was only last week in St. Louis I was getting notifications about dangerous air quality. Are we really in a position to be cutting down healthy trees? According to the Arbor Day Foundation, a single mature tree could absorb over 48 pounds of carbon dioxide in just 1 year. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I strongly suggest that the members here consider my stance against the construction of another new house to maintain the safety of all its residents, human and other. Please take a moment and truly look at the pictures of the trees, as nothing can be constructed to match their beauty. Many of us view global warming as hopeless or inevitable, but simple individual actions can have a massive impact. The people in this room can decide the fate of the 7 trees, as the only thing that trees ask for us in return is to let them live. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Anyone else out there in attendance have a general comment? Seeing none, Carlos, will you check the online?
Chairman, I recognize one of the names online, but if there's anybody that would like to speak in regards to public comments in general of items not on the agenda, if you can show your hand. And Chairman, I have none.
Okay, we'll move on to item 5, new business, and item A is 3 Cherry Lane. Carlos?
All right, 1 second, Chairman. This is a petition for a new single-family home at the property at 3 Cherry Lane, which was just referenced in the public comments a second ago. This home does require site plan review, meaning that the authority of the commission is somewhat broadened, given its lot depth. It's shallower than traditional lots in a typical subdivision. We should have 150-foot depth. This home has 115-foot depth. So do all the other homes within this subdivision. What that means is that they got a smaller backyard. So as you put the home within the buildable area, your traditional backyard is narrow in there. And that is a concern given how it abuts the adjacent subdivision to the north, because the topology, the grades drop really quickly as you go through. So in reviewing the home for community design, we didn't find any issues with that. Given comments regarding trees, that might be something that the commission might want to talk but in there. But there's no distinction between the developments that have gone along this street or in other properties and the removal of trees. But you do have on your survey the trees that would be removed and those that are to stay. And the ones along the western side of the property where the larger lots, there's a couple of larger trees that are shown, but note there are underground utilities that are in close proximity. And usually that's one of the main culprits in there. The placement of the side entry garage also will require the removal of one of the trees on the east that's significantly large on the property grounds in there. Regarding mass, roof, elevation, articulation, and materials, we feel it strongly fits within the parameters of the city's design guidelines. This is an illustration here to kind of talk about the topography. And if you can see along here is Cherry Lane, and then there's a cul-de-sac in there. Gets a little hard to see in the color differentiation, but bear with me. What happens, and again, because this is a narrow lot, you can see the typical lot to the north has a depth of possibly over 150 feet, where here you only have 115 feet. So that means that the grades, that backyard becomes smaller, but then I have a significant grade drop back here. Now note, because of the city's concept stormwater management regulations, the entire roof area of this new home will be redirected to underground detention system that's going to be in the front yard. So on the south of the property, which will release to the street, the south of the property. So we're actually reducing the amount of surface area that's being generated or that's impacted by stormwater on this site than what exists right now. The concern is, again, is what happens with the rest of the grade. Water is still going to go downhill. We cannot change that, and nor is that the role of the commission to redirect drainage to different locations than the natural flow of the stormwater. However, we have to be cognizant of the velocities and the filtration of that. So given that we have the authority of site plan review, condition that's noted in staff's report is to either put some amended soils or some rain garden or other BMP practices, BMP being best management practices, along the rear for the sole purpose of slowing the water as it goes downhill. Again, we're not redirecting or changing the location of the stormwater, and actually, we're actually pushing less stormwater to the rear than we were before. The other condition would be being cognizant of the driveway turnaround and the hard surface area is to ensure that the driveway drains towards the street. So it might require that there's a lip here and maybe relocation of that retaining wall to contain the water and redirect it to the street. The reason again is the hard surface area creates a significant velocity or the opportunity for velocity. And again, we cannot stop the water from going downhill. And in this case, there is an opportunity here to do so. And again, with the sole purposes of this is again, that the only water that would be going is going through the natural, would be the finisher or final grades of the grass area in the back of the house. Bear with me one second. In there. So there are two conditions that staff has recommended as part of your reports in there. I'll be glad to answer any specific questions. I also have more detailed plans of both the site plan and the building plans if there are any questions by the commission members.
Do any commission members have a question or comment for Carlos? Go ahead, Brian.
Carlos, the 115 feet back, what is it today? I know that's the plan for what.
The ideal lot depth is 150 feet.
Understand, but the
Okay.
current residence.
Oh, it's 115. Oh, between the old house and
Yeah.
the backyard, that I don't believe is specifically listed. We can get that for you though. In here, and here you'll see the two properties kind of side by side.
I'm just curious if we're going from 150 to 115, are we going from 120 to 115? Just trying to understand.
And just to note, all within the buildable area of the lot itself. So bear with me.
115 is the depth.
Yeah, but it's 150 is preferred, right? It's gonna be 115. I'm just curious what it was. It was before,
It's always going to be
You're right,
115.
you're asking what it is from the back of the house to the backyard is what was existing and then what is proposed. I
Mhm.
think that's what you're.
proposed is 115.
He's talking, no, he's the
Oh,
property depth, the entire
Oh,
property
yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay.
is 150.
Oh, I
and it
apologize.
will
Okay.
Always stay 150.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
Yeah, I don't believe the PDF we have here provides the ability to measure. I'll give it a shot though.
10 feet. And that's fine. I think I was misunderstanding the total depth versus that isn't a concern, it sounds like, so. Yeah. And then I
This is showing me something I don't know, so this is pretty exciting.
So right now, the closest hard surface area to the rear of the lot. Based on, and again, this would be a proportionate measurement, so it's not the ideal, but it's 1.47 along here. And I couldn't tell you what exactly that number is in there, but when you measure with the new property, you go to a 1.36 in there. So, that back of the house does get closer.
Yeah.
In there, not significantly, I was still within the required setback area.
and I think the setback is what I was more concerned
Okay.
about. And then I guess if you let me follow up, I
Yeah,
guess
go
to the conversation on trees. I couldn't remember what even parameters we would have to even address that. at
We
all.
do have in our design guidelines, some standards for the review and the trees. First, all submittals have to identify trees on the site and provide the caliper of those trees, which this one does. In there, that's required by our submission standards in there, so the commission can assess or look at that information. And there, our focus, I hadn't heard the comments or the focus, and these things kind of go in pendulums in there. So, this was brought up regarding this petition. The second thing, within the guidelines themselves, and again, these are guidelines, not necessarily ordinance regulations. It notes that the trees within the buildable area, because that is the defined buildable area, there's reasonable expectation that they would be removed. It also is cognizant that the footprint or the basement dig is going to be extended out another 5 feet. And about all the street utilities that run in there, and usually, and so we require them to show those in here. So here you can see how the gas line runs and how close it may be to another tree. It says that the trees allow outside on the perimeter that you should try to preserve as many as you can. However, on another component of the guidelines, we encourage side and rear entry garages. Well, that means we're extending into the side or buildable perimeter in there. So that usually has an adverse effect in there. And you can see where, in this case, it was a smaller house. You know, here when you have a 4 or where there was a 3 or 2 side entry garage, you're going to have to have a minimum 24 foot setback or to get out. So that comes into play in the process. It notes that, you know, if you are going to remove a tree, that the commission has the ability to consider replacement of that tree. And there's no specific set standard, like it's not a 1-for-1. You can consider the caliper size, the quality of the tree, or the locations. If you are going to consider, the other thing that impacts the site now is through our concept stormwater management plan, because now we're requiring on-site detention, and that usually is going to occur in the outside of the buildable area. And again, all this is a function of design, and design can change, you know, if a tone is set. I'll note that. And I think that kind of covers it out. The commission has the ability, you know, to take in consideration if you do require additional trees. We have to be cognizant. Again, we don't want trees planted too close to the curb, within the proximity of underground utilities that, you know, that they may get impacted over time if there was any utility work or things of that nature. And of course, maintaining them out of electrical easements.
Carlos, I have a question about the driveway. Which way, is that gonna all slope towards the street?
Yeah, if you look at the elevations that are provided by the surveyor, you see an 685.1 here at this corner. And then you see down here by the street, 684 to 683.5.
The only thing that caught my eye was the 686.3 in the southeast corner.
And down here,
Right, no, at the kind of the top where the driveway is kind of more
yeah,
rectangular.
so it looks like they have it split in there. I'm not sure what the purpose of the hump would be. And the petitioner is here and can address that. And it
Okay.
could be that the island of the elevation, you know, which ran this way, is being extended outward.
I just don't want, now we start sloping back into the other yards and, you know, create a potential issue that wasn't there before.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other questions or comments with Carlos? Carol, any questions or comments for Carlos?
I was just looking at the site, and it's a smaller than usual site, so there isn't a whole lot of flexibility here. I understand that. I was wondering if there was some way to design this such that there'd be a little less impact to the trees. So maybe we could save 1 tree or 2 trees even. That'd be great. I'm not that great at design, so I couldn't begin to speculate at the top of my head, but I don't know. Carlos, you're better at this than I. Do you have any thoughts about it?
Not necessarily. Again, it's a change of direction. You can see a majority, there's only there's 2 lots left in all of that haven't been redeveloped. I'm not sure. And then the Creve Coeur side, which is down here, is one, but you know, that cluster where the older homes are, is where it's at. It's something to talk to the developer about. And there's any possibilities, I'm concerned about the design because it hasn't been an issue before. So they're following a process through these guidelines for some consistency. If the focus is going to change, and I think there is merit to consider it. And there is, I think it'd be good for the petitioner to try to address if there's other means or ways or considerations to alternatives. But again, I think they kind of follow what the commission's authorized in the past.
Let's do this. Let's hear from the petitioner. And, he's heard some of our thoughts, so let's hear what he has to say.
Sounds fine.
There you go.
Hi, my name is Arthur Cotes. I'm the owner and a developer of the subject property. So regarding the design, because of the depth of the lot only to be 115 foot, you can see the main house, it's actually like a shallow. And only the section that next to the garage, it's a little deeper, just to create a bigger possible yard that, that can be possibly achieved. Back in 2013, I believe, or 14, we built number 2, the one on the left. And you can see the little section of that house is basically mirrored to that house. And that house has the same way next to the garage on the west side of the property has a deeper section of the house. The rest of it is like it's also thinner line. So there is not too much to do with the design of the house on 115 foot deep lot and keeping reasonable size backyard. Regarding the trees, I can tell you, I always all for to keep the trees, but I guess they haven't done enough study that a lot of those trees, they're hollow and dead inside. And I've been getting phone calls from Carlos for the last year and a half. I owned that property for a couple of years. There is dead branches falling down on the driveway or front lawn. And we've been cleaning those dead branches from those trees. So they're not.
Is that, just sorry to interrupt, but dead wood typically happens with any tree. So is
No,
this
but
a
they're
diseased
hollow.
tree? It's hollow on the inside?
Yeah, the maples, you can see clearly, they're hollow on the inside. And they're big. And especially the one that on the left, the one that even we try to preserve, that's fairly dead tree. The one that, not this one, the one on the front left. Yeah, that one. That tree is in a bad shape.
That looks like that's being said.
Yeah, well, we're trying to save it, but I'm gonna get the certified tree guy and we'll see if we can save the tree or not.
Okay.
And regarding the driveway, the one that you did the comment regarding the front right section of the turnaround, it is definitely, if we have to turn the water south, we can definitely raise the north corner of the driveway up and redirect the whole water from the entire driveway to the street, if, just to avoid the water to go into the backyard.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Is there a sewer, street sewer?
Yes, there's an
Yeah.
inlet at the end of there is an inlet at the end of the cul-de-sac.
Good, just
I'll
to
show
make
you.
sure, because some neighborhoods don't have that, and. Any other questions or comments for the developer?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so on the driveway entry to the garage, do you have enough room there to make a good turn into that garage?
We'll have 25 feet of turnaround, and that's what required by the city to have 25 feet from the door to.
Okay. as far as that is on the, where's the site plan here? It looks, I'm seeing like a, is it a retaining wall or a tie wall to the,
To the
East.
east of it, yeah, I mean, there is a retaining wall like 4 feet away from the edge of the driveway.
4 feet? Okay.
And it's gonna be like a grassy area, so the car still will gonna be able to
So some buffer.
overhang
Okay.
from the drive.
All right, yeah, because I'm just thinking about going into that last spot there, you kind of have to like maybe make a 2 or 3 point turn, but it looks doable. Okay.
What's this siding gonna be?
That's gonna be hardy cement siding.
Party cement siding?
Yeah, and it's gonna be mostly on the back section of the house. The front gonna be lighter brick. Oh, it's okay, good. And what are the garage doors? They're garage doors. It's not like it looks like a siding, but it's not.
Any other questions or comments for the developer?
Chairman, a couple, if you don't
Yeah,
mind,
no
as we
problem.
go through this process, again, being cognizant of the concerns that are expressed on that, and it's part of the guidelines, so, these things, the observations and views of the commission can change over time, given changes in materials, changes of priorities and things of that nature. Some things kind of resolve themselves and lead to other things that become more apparent in there. So as we get to the trees, a couple of questions, I guess, for the petitioner and the commission in there. So, compared to the old house, there was a gas line and a water line. You can see them here and here, and then there's the sanitary line, which isn't shown here, but it's reflective in the new footprint. And note in the new footprint, with the detention in place now, both the gas and the water get shifted to the west, and the sanitary lateral looks like it's about right here. So been pretty close, proximity to those flow wells. So you'll have excavations or various different types of excavations occurring here, and then of course occurring in the perimeter and for the underground detention system. So all these kind of get into place. So you get this web mixture of things, and it gets difficult in there. And then the other thing is, we get concerns regarding construction traffic, construction material to be off of the street, and we try to get them as much into the property as possible. So you try to find, areas that are best suited for that. So there's a lot of activity going on in a little space, and that's okay. That's part of the construction process. But that being said, Mr. Coates, if you can kind of, what type of, once you hear from, let's say a tree analysis is conducted, what steps would you take to try to at least to preserve the 38 and the 35 in there that are realistic? I mean, that we're not,
I mean,
you put up?
35, I believe. I don't, it's Oko is a gumball tree, because like one of them, they're gumball tree, and it creates a lot of, that. I don't think anybody would want to keep gumball tree over there.
But it goes on the basis that those are the ones you're showing to stay.
Yeah,
As
no,
opposed
the
to,
gumball, I believe, is the one that's going out. Yeah,
so
that 36. So, I mean, if they're healthy tree, we'll consider to keep them, and, we'll protect.
but would you
the
put
root.
like another perimeter fence on the exterior? Again, it's, while we do have the staffing, it is pretty stretched and limited. So we want to make sure that at least while we're not there, that there's something in place. Correct. But with the recognition too, there are going to be excavations, going through that process also. But if you take some extra steps to put a perimeter.
I mean, if the left tree, the very left one, the biggest one over there, if there would have been healthy tree, we'll do everything to preserve the tree, to keep it there.
And how will you do that?
well, will protect the root zone and, you know, will not disturb the soil. And that elevation doesn't get changed much at all. So,
But you'll have something to define the perimeter, you know, that you're a guy who subs to another guy who subs to the other guy. That's going to put the piping for the drain, you know, for the drain system.
I
you
mean,
know,
I can make sure we're gonna stay
you know,
away.
That
I
is
mean, we
well
can-
defined.
Yeah, I mean, we can put those pipes within the overdeck of the foundation, so we don't have to go too far out to put the drainage in.
Go ahead, Tim.
I think what we're looking for is an orange fence that goes around the tree.
Yeah,
in
the tree
out-
protection
in
zone.
the- Right, and outside their canopy is what
Yes.
we're looking for.
Sure.
Okay, good. And if you could set that up kind of when you set up your erosion fences and, you know, stuff
Yeah.
like that as part of it. That way we can, you know, our inspectors can come out there and take a look at it and see.
Okay.
Then the second thing, and other developers have brought this to my attention, but I would assume at the end, there is some type of landscape plan, or the purchaser may come to you and say, you know, they want you to do some landscaping in there. When is the best opportunity, you know, as you go through these processes, this is not your first home here, but to make a landscape plan available, is that something you would consider?
I mean, if, you know, each homeowner will have different thoughts on the landscaping, but some reasonable landscape plan definitely can be submitted as well.
And that's something that other developers we've discussed with other developers about, that maybe at some point a separate landscape plan comes in that addresses any of the tree, you know, we could utilize to assess, you know, what is the remaining of the trees or what's gonna stay
That's
after
right.
that fact. So
So Carlos, do we have anything to where, I know just through construction, we're gonna lose a tree from time to time. Do we have anything in place where if we, you know, lose an old growth tree, it has to be replaced by, you know, two street trees or like something similar?
there's within the guidelines is a recommendation, which is me
Okay.
just telling you, you should consider that if you're gonna take the big one out, to put two, but not, you take the big one out, you put two. You understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is.
Now, through this process, again, the commission has the authority, especially like in the site plan review. For lack of a better word, you know, more teeth to put into the requirements if it wanted to. Again, but for us, you know, it's better to give the heads up to the developer when we know that, okay, the commission, you know, is going to be focusing on these things. Not to say that they weren't talking about trees in there, it just hadn't risen up as you know, and again, this was a good design, met all the materials, all the massing, all the elevations, that you start focusing on the other things, because it is a good quality design.
Yeah, I will say, I do appreciate the, as far as the community design goes, these kind of stair stepped approach here on the front and back elevation to the sides. We recently approved property that's already under construction where it goes 2 stories all the way to the edge. So I do appreciate the kind of, yeah, tapered effect there. Looks good.
Carla, and I think from the trees, like, because I agree, we're gonna lose some in construction, and I like the concept of ordinance, and it goes to the broader conversation here, but it'd be interesting to also consider, as we ask people to replace, if they don't have, if there's not availability on that property, maybe it's in a park, or maybe it's on a street, or maybe it's someplace else that we're asking a person, because then it's not a complete 1-for-1, but you know, whether it's Stacy or Irv or I don't know, any of the other park is, we're saying, look, if we're gonna get rid of a big tree, can it be, you know, help get it? Get a mature tree? So we're not gonna solve it tonight, but you know.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, but let's stay focused on the task at hand. Any more questions or comments for the petition? Otherwise, it's a very nice house.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think we'll now ask for if there's any public comments related to this item. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, this is a tough issue, like I said, but, so I'm just gonna throw this out. I don't know if it would work, but would it be possible just to have a front entrance garage? Like, you know, like there's a lot of houses in Olivet, and it would cut that size of the driveway in half. And would it save any trees?
Well, unfortunately, right now, the way our ordinances are written, they're more, that's not the desired, look, or, it goes against kind of our guidelines.
I understand. I'm just saying, because the lot is so small and there are kind of water, it would cut that pervious surface in half, roughly. And I'm just,
It may not cut it
Throwing
in
it out.
half because you're gonna have the front apron in front of those garages, so it will open up wide in the front.
oh, yeah, I see what you're saying.
So it would reduce some, but it definitely won't reduce.
But
the
I
whole
thought I'd just throw that out, because again, if it's a guideline, if it's a possibility, and if it would solve some issues, it's just worth considering.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
all I'm saying.
No,
And then just one other comment. We have a sweet gum tree and it's great. I would never cut it down. Yeah, the little balls are a pain in the fall and you gotta rake them, but my goodness, what a great tree, because it's got a huge canopy. And the other thing, yeah, I was gonna mention the same thing that I think Carlos brought up, that again, it's tough because you're putting such a big house on the smaller lot, but again, I was gonna make the same comment that, okay, if you cut down a big tree, plant a couple, and yeah, you can't, there's some kind of ratio, I think, in the guidelines, if you have a big tree, or maybe even, maybe even consider bushes or something like that, to offset
Yeah.
the tree loss,
it's good comments.
so.
Thank you, Stephanie. Go ahead.
So I guess my only suggestion would be.
Please state your name and
Sorry,
address.
Mona Cafoe, and I'm on 6 Cherry Lane. One of my only suggestion would be to maybe get a third party, a person who does like the tree analyzing, because I know not that I don't trust whoever decided the trees were deemed unhealthy, but I think that maybe someone else should also do it that's unbiased, that doesn't necessarily want the trees to be cut off or not, like it, just someone that's unbiased about it, because obviously even if a tree is still dying, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's unsafe. Dying trees are still a source of habitat. They provide nesting sites for various animals. Every night when I'm at my parents' house, I'll see owls. And I think I'm really the only one in the neighborhood that really notices the owls, because I'm the one that goes out with her dog at night, and you can hear them and they're up in those trees. So even if they're dying, they're still being lived in. So I just really recommend maybe a third party analysis on the trees, because even from the pictures that you saw, they are beautiful and they're sprouting leaves. That's what the trees sprout. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Just as a point, just because I've had a home with large trees that had holes in the middle of it and had a huge one fall. Luckily, it didn't hit any people. It didn't hit any of my cars, and it didn't hit my house. But it was devastating, and, it is a danger, if a tree is not, if it's near its end of its life, you really have to be careful. And if you don't, sometimes they're hidden, issues. And so it's definitely good to get an arborist involved, but sometimes there's a point where you do have to take a tree down, or you risk, danger to property and people. So
I'm in that situation right now with a tree in the backyard. It is hollow, yes, critters and insects, but I'm begging God every time we have a bad storm that it doesn't crack through the ground and end up in my house, garage, cars. Yeah.
All right, great comments, everybody. Appreciate it. Is there any other comments online?
If there's anybody that'd like to speak in regards to this petition, I know Mr. Pavel or Ivanchuk, you are on. Just show your hand. I am going to bring the architect over.
Hi, Carlos. Yes, I followed the discussion and I don't have any comments, but if anybody has any questions, I can answer.
I don't think we have any questions. So we appreciate you coming online and we think it was a well-designed house. You know, we're just kind of struggling with these tree issues, you know, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that being said, any further discussion amongst the commission members associated with the trees? If you want my opinion, I mean, it's tough to lose big trees like that, you know, but I think they're at least trying to save as many trees as possible. I do know like some of those ones with all of the utilities being connected and everything, if we left those trees there, a lot of them are going to die as well. And then there's nothing you really can do about the driveway issue. So, but I think it's worthwhile to get the landscape plan and everything like that that was kind of talked about. Go ahead.
I think maybe if the developer would be willing to say, hey, we will replace those trees at least one for one, I think that would go a long way for everybody in the audience and the commission as well.
We can definitely consider replace, maybe not one for one, but at least 3-4 trees. You know, I don't know, maybe 3 in the front, but on the back of the house, there are going to be some landscaping coming from the homeowner, and that's include possibly going to be like green giant arborvitaes, which one I believe it's part of the Missouri native trees.
Mhm.
And I mean, I built several homes in Clayton, and they have on the trees that thing that they're replacing. When you're removing the tree, you have to replace with the Missouri native tree. So there are going to be a lot of trees on the back of the house for sure. Now regarding the front of the house, how many trees there will be considered to plant? Definitely, I will push to put maybe 2 or 3 trees, you know, maybe some maples that bigger trees in the future. So not just like a bush or some, you know, some small tree.
I think that would be fair.
And one of the things, again, with the revised landscaping or any new landscaping is to be cognizant of that. Again, I think if there is an opportunity to place, you know, whether it's you or the new owner has to be cognizant of there's a web of activity that in a very shallow lot and in there. So the idea of having more than 2 in here, I don't know where they would put them without damaging. So, you know, that's where it becomes
A future issue.
I think I was more looking for on the lot, no matter
Yeah.
where it was on the lot to oxygen and anything like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's totally
Yeah,
reasonable.
go ahead.
Petitioner, one question, what, this pool house room, is that?
Well, they consider to put future pool, not at this point, so that's gonna be now on the left side of the house. We're gonna build a finished space. Either it's gonna be used as a master closet, extension of master closet, or future pool house. You know, they will decide how they wanna, you know, how they're
Okay.
gonna use that section of the house. But instead to build another structure on the back of the house later on, at least, you know, we're gonna avoid that scenario.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Do I hear a petition? Or hear motion? Thank you. Gosh, it's been a long day.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Carol.
I'd like to motion to approve the petition for site plan, community design, and concept stormwater management plan review for a new single-family home at 3 Cherry Lane, as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated June 16th, 2023, subject to any staff conditions noted therein. And I note that I also like to add the condition that the developer pay particular attention to the trees on this, existing trees on the site and save what he can. And to seriously examine replacing the trees if he has to take them down.
The only comment, Carol, if you wouldn't mind, if we can just amend that from June 16th to June 15th, which I believe is today, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
1-5.
Sure.
All right. Okay. Motion's been made by Carol Wagner. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And seconded by Tim Spiegelglass. Carlos, you please call the vote.
Yes. Commissioner Wallach,
Oh, okay, before we do the vote, can we also add into the motion about changing the elevations of the driveway so we can have all the water slope to the street?
and I think that what's noted in staff report, which is part of the condition.
Oh, it is.
Would be
Oh,
Would address that.
fantastic. I apologize.
the two conditions in the staff report, and those were noted at the bottom. Just so, and the developer has been provided a copy of the staff report today too. But it
Okay.
notes about the amended soils or some type of BMP
Yeah.
along the rear, and they're already talking about doing some gardening back there, and that should be able to address it, and then redirect the driveway, turn around and slope south towards the street.
That's great.
Okay.
I didn't
Not a
see
problem,
that.
sir.
My fault. All right. Scratch that. Carlos, you please call the vote.
Okay. So Commissioner Wallach,
Approved.
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Approved.
Commissioner Rose Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes.
Commissioner Jurgel,
Approved.
and the motion passes unanimously 6-0.
Okay, good. All right, we'll move on now to item B, which is 9501 Bonham Road. Carlos?
Chairman, really good designs in this go round for the month. This is 9501 Bonham Road. It's the northeast corner of Bonham Road and Old Bonham. Oh, excuse me, it's 9501 Old Bonham Road and Bonham Woods, I believe. I get the streets, there's a lot of Bonhams. So I apologize. It's Bonham Woods and Old Bonham. There's an existing home that's being torn down. We have Olivet residents who are here, who are relocating and moving into this new home. And they, along with their contractor, have prepared the proposed plans that are here before you tonight in there. It was a great design, very contemporary. There are a couple of things that we'll bring to the commission's attention that would have to be noted by staff because of the design guidelines. And one is the 50% masonry requirement, or not, it's not a requirement, recommendation in there. And I think that's why the petitioner took the time and effort to provide you various colored renderings. So you can get a view and all that. And then they'll talk about the materials. I mean, it's listed in the plans as EFIS, but it's more advanced EFIS than the old traditional type, and they'll explain that a little bit further in there. So from a staff perspective, we would recommend the commission to consider that as part of the process. One of the things, though, that we noted late and had a discussion today with the petitioner was we didn't verify the underground detention system. So in the plans before you, which reflect the grades and the top of foundation that would be proposed for this lot, the calculations for the detention are on your plans. We just didn't get the defined area of where it would be and what it would consist of. That being said, I apologize on there. We didn't pick that up till later in the week, had the discussion with the developer about that today. We would hope that the commission would consider at least acting on the community design review component of that once we have a discussion about materials in there. And then if there's any other issues on stormwater impacts, it's a pretty sizable lot in there. And overall, again, anything that would be collected within the roof area and the pool would be provided some type of detention system that will come back with that design at the later meeting if they didn't have an opportunity to address it today. So again, the calculations are on your plans in there, but we had the discussion that they have to provide the full volume detention in that. So what you would be seeing is similar to what you saw in the previous petition. And I'm going to change here, Carol. I'm not sure if you follow through on that, but you know, we didn't get this detail and the placement and the location of where that would be. And I apologize for that. And I also apologize to the petitioner that we didn't pick that up earlier.
Okay, any questions or comments for Carlos? Seeing none, Carol, do you have any questions or comments for Carlos?
I just want to say that I just love the design.
Yeah. It's really nice.
And I'm thrilled that it's a modern, interesting, something different. And I wish we had more of it and all that.
Great. Okay, so I think at this point in time, let's hear from the petitioner.
Good evening, members of the commission, Mr. Chair. My name is Mike Whalen. I'm the owner of Whalen Custom Homes. With me is John Matheny, the architect of the home before you tonight that we are proposing at 9501 Old Bonham. We are representing Laura and Jabari Robinson, who are current residents of Olivet. A lot of time and attention.
Excuse me, Carol.
Yes,
Would you
sir.
mind just stating your
Oh,
address?
I'm sorry, 338 South Kirkwood Road, Kirkwood, Missouri. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, a lot of time and attention went into this plan. It was a labor of love. Thank you for the very kind words about it. I'd like to point out with regard to Carlos's comments about the exterior material. The term EFIS is really just an acronym for external finish insulation system. The product that we are installing, there's the two primary exterior products. There's about 3,600 surface feet on this structure. And we're using two cement substrate products. One is called Stowe Quicksilver 2, which is a cement substrate with a polymer finish on it. It's not plaster, it's not stucco, it's truly a masonry product. And then James Hardy fiber cement siding. And then the other product is just a natural cedar siding. So we're 66% cementitious product on the exterior, and the rest would be natural wood with some aluminum soffit fascia and whatnot. With regard to the stormwater, remarkably, this site, we have a less 1.41 Q or CFS. The stormwater runoff subsequent to our proposed condition is the same or a little bit less than what's there right now. Carlos and I spoke today about installing a dry well. That's nothing new to us. We do it in Clayton, Ladue, Webster Groves, Kirkwood, everywhere. Not a problem. Gravity would probably like it to be in the rear yard if we can find a way to get it around utilities and whatnot. So we would definitely, we install them all the time. My crews install them themselves. So we're very familiar with that. So we could get that information to Carlos within a matter of days. So the architect, John Mathany's here. We'd be happy to answer any questions for you. We do have an arborist report in here. I think we have a very thorough site plan, very thorough set of blueprints, and a lot of renderings because we really wanted you guys to understand the language of this house. We really think it's a beautiful piece, and it's just going to be very prominent on that corner, but not overpowering for the neighborhood. So we're happy to answer any questions for you. And I'd like to invite the architect, John Mathany, up here to answer any questions as well.
Mr. Matheny, is it? If you could just state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name's John Matheny, Matheny Architects. I'm also at 338 South Kirkwood Road, Kirkwood.
Good. Thank you. Does any commission members have any questions or comments for the petitioners?
I think they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
No question about it. No question about it.
Really nice. Carol, did you have any other further comments?
None.
No, it looks very nice. Looks great. Okay, I think at this point in time, we appreciate you guys coming up here. If we're going to just ask for public comments related to this one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody out in the audience that have any public comments related to this item? Seeing none, Carlos, will you check the online?
If there's anybody online that would like to speak in regards to this petition, if you can let me know. We have one person, but they're not raising their hand yet.
Let's give them a few.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, Chairman, I have no hand.
Okay, so we'll move on to any more further discussion.
The one thing I would
Thank you.
note, Chairman, is how, just a brief update on how you would like to handle the concept stormwater management plan. And there, we can bring it back at the next meeting, and I'd encourage it if you consider this would at least get the permitting process
Yeah,
underway.
I think we could easily do that. We could also, leave it to staff,
Yeah.
if
And we'd
there's
be
any
fine or
issue.
comfortable with that.
Agreed.
And if there's a
Okay.
question or problem, then you can bring it back to us,
Let's move forward.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, there's
Mr.
your,
Chairman,
go ahead, Carol.
I prefer just to go ahead and motion on the community design review and just have them bring the stormwater management plan back to us.
Okay, and why is that?
Just because stormwater is such an issue always in all of that, I would rather take a look at it and just, I just prefer that the commission take a look at it.
No, I
I
understand.
trust staff explicitly, as I
Right.
can do with that.
Understood. I don't have any strong feelings. I can go along with that if that's how everybody feels.
She's suggesting go to staff for approval still.
No,
No,
she wants
bring
to
it
come
back
back here.
Yeah, I guess, Carol, I feel like staff knows kind of where we've been going, but I don't have strong feelings. so.
Well, I think it's close too, that they have the calculations and they have everything. They're just looking for the placement. Am I correct with that? With that part of it?
And we kind of know that it's going to be in the rear yard for gravity, it's just kind of figuring out the best location. And honestly, I think, our consultant that we have is going to be probably a better source than members of this commission. I don't know. So Carol, would you mind if we went ahead and just left it with staff?
I could be comfortable with that. I was just keeping in mind our tree discussion and so on. I was just thinking that it might be good to just take a look at it, but that's,
What I would say, Carlos, is if there's any question or any issues, then have it come back to us.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So seeing no further discussion right now, do I hear a motion?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, I'll make motion.
Go ahead.
Motion to approve petition for community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a new single-family home at 95 Old Bonham Road. As presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated June 15, 2023, subject to any staff conditions noted therein.
Motion's been made by Brian Lewis. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And seconded by Tim Spiegelglass. Carlos, you please call the vote.
Commissioner Waller,
Approved.
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
approved.
Chairman Dragell.
Approved.
The motion passes unanimously 6-0.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on now to item 5C, which is 595 Dealman Road.
Okay, Chairman, we received a petition for a 3-lot subdivision plat for the property address is 595 Dealman Road, and you'll note in your packets of staff report, the location. It extends off the Dealman Road, just a bit south of the city waterway line and where the bike trail is. And then from Dealman, it heads east all the way up to White Rose Lane. And there, it doesn't have any current access from White Rose Lane. It is all one property, a little bit over 3 acres, I believe. And they're looking to subdivide the lot into 3 parcels. 2 parcels would access White Rose Lane, as is illustrated in there, and then the existing home on the property grounds would maintain its new boundaries and access off of Dealman Road. In there, we did bring this to the commission for a discussion a couple of meetings ago, just to give you a heads up of the petition that was coming in there. In addition to that, the petitioner, along with staff, met with neighboring property owners from the Bottom Woods subdivision to discuss access, construction, and impact in there with some of the trustee representatives and the neighbor right adjacent to this on the western side in there. So and there was a understanding and support for the petition as submitted as to other options that were discussed prior or considered in there.
What was decided about, kind of construction traffic and things like that?
Correct. They noted that Bonham Woods is a private drive, and I'm getting the bottoms confused, so I apologize on there, but we're right at the terminus of White Rose. It does veer west, and after that first lot, it becomes a private road, and they urge the developer not to be accessing or using that, and to have some signage up in the process. The immediate neighbor to the north kind of understood what was proposed. Some of the concerns were adding 2 additional units onto the street, the impacts it would have during construction traffic, and of course the grading trees and what's going to go on into the side. We also talked about the potential of having a trail linkage from White Rose extended north to where the city water right of way is at, where we have our multi-purpose trail, and connecting to that, so they were aware of that, and then just general discussions of the grading and such. Long story short, I mean, there was no adamant opposition in terms of what was being submitted. That.
Okay, good.
So that gets us to the design. And again, in your packet, you have a little bit more visibility of where the location and the density in that area is. It is a very unique site. And, all the easy sites have been subdivided. And we get down to, these that are really difficult. And there's a couple of things that I'd like to bring to the commission's attention as we look at that. The current floodplain maps, the thorough review ends at the boundaries of I-170. So when FEMA was doing these maps back in the 70s and 80s, they didn't go any further west than 170. And what they did was a general calculation of what they would call the 500 year floodplain, which you can build on. So there's not very much direction and elevation information as you would find east of 170 as you go into U City. However, FEMA is updating those maps, but they haven't been adopted yet. And we've seen those maps, and those maps extend the study of the floodplain floodway from I-170 all the way to just past Dealman Road. And what you see here, and I think in your staff reports, is that what was once a non-100-year floodplain is now a 100-year floodplain. Well, I got to be careful with the word uses. Potentially, if adopted, would become a 100-year floodplain right along the culvert crossing here. And we've seen that area flood before. It's nothing new. And we did some improvements to the bridge to help alleviate some of those flooding impacts and all that. And there's been some public hearings regarding the potential boundaries, but they still haven't been adopted. The last hearing we had, which was here at the city chambers, was probably 5 years ago. And we're still waiting for what the adoption is. And you throw in COVID, budgetary constraints and things like that. I'm sure there are multiple factors why it has not. The last we heard was this fall. But again, we've heard that every year that it's going to be, this season. So, so anyway, in that being said, we made sure that we had that discussion with the petitioner, and understanding that the floodplain would be increased. And while it's not effective yet, we should be cognizant of the buildability and the elevations that would be proposed for any new homes on these 2 lots. And they have taken a look at that. And again, these are just aerial diagrams, so they're not proportionally correct, but they understand the concern and they're aware of that, and they'll get us some additional detail and information on that. The other thing is that there is a ravine or a creek that is identified by the USGS that runs underneath Dealman into this property. What we were not clear was where that location was. Newer maps kind of show it here as this white blue line that you see that runs through here. Older maps show it coming in along here in this arch. But the official map only shows it coming in and turning here and stopping in there. And the reason I note that is that we have an ordinance that if there is a ravine or creek identified in a USGS topological map, there are some protection requirements that are imposed. One is a minimum 25-foot undisturbed natural area, and then an additional 25-foot limited disturbed area. The goal here is to allow water to filter, clean itself up, and slow down as it goes into the creek. And we do that in conjunction with several communities, majority of the communities that are part of the Metropolitan Sewer District. So the plat is cognizant of that and takes that into account. I'll show you how they address that in a second, but I wanted to bring those things up again. And then, you know, what I'm showing here is a LiDAR, which they run like these lasers overhead, and they can shade and grade when you have changes of topography. And we use this in a couple of our slides today in there, but you can see when you get a really dark gray area means that there's a significant change of grade. So you can see here, you know, there's a big drop in grade, and then there's a secondary drop in grade as you go back there, which clearly kind of define where the ravine and creek areas are at. And then you can see the high points in there. All that being said is that, you know, we're cognizant of these things. We want to make sure that the developer takes those things into consideration as to make sure that these will become viable, buildable lots for prospective residents in all of that, and that they have, you know, viable, usable yards in the process in there. So that's a couple of things that are noted there. Here is the plat that you have in hand. And again, you can see the concentration lines of all the contours in the existing property that would stay. But then as you get into the lot 2 and 3, the two proposed new lots, how the grades are kind of being shifted in here and in those areas there. In your plat, you also have the location and you see the creek setback, and that's been revised, and you'll have it in your plat of information. And I'll show that on the screen in just a second. But the key goal was to understand, you know, what the front yard setback would be, and they're proposing the minimum permitted by the city, which is 25 feet, and to ensure that there's buildability behind there and viable lot usage for each of those properties that would be proposed. I'm going to go into the detail. And there, bear with me 1 second. And Carol, I'm making the assumption that you can see the changes in the slides as I go through. Please
Okay.
Okay. So you can see the USGS creek is identified right here. And that's the extent that it goes through in the official maps. Then they provide the 25-foot creek setback, which would be, you know, non-disturbed, and no disturbance is being proposed in that area. And then the additional 25-foot setback where there would be limited disturbance permitted, no disturbance is being proposed, given that it's maintaining that existing lot on those grounds. The culvert underneath Dealman Road kind of crosses right around this area. And then I'm going to go over here in here. What we don't see, though, we'd like to see is the proposed floodplain elevations that are being considered imposed, so we can have a better understanding than the aerials that we're trying to put together.
Do you know what elevation that is?
That is something that they'll have to, you know, on the State Emergency Management Agency's website. They do have an online protocol where you portal where you can get some of that information already, and we've shared that with the developer. And there is just at the revisions that I have to date. While they're giving the elevations, we'd like to see
I just wonder how accurate that 100-year floodplain, you know, actually is compared to the actual grades that have been surveyed.
And that's another good question, because there are going to be just differences between, especially one that did much of a macro view as opposed to a micro view. But what it will tell you is the elevation that it's adopting, and then we'll know where it is or what's being proposed. Right now, there's nothing that limits the property owner, the developer, outside of permits, of adding additional fill and moving that elevation in there, even though the preliminary map has already been in there. The new owner may have to go and do a map amendment through FEMA to show that they're out of that area. And that's basically, it will be a survey with the new elevations outlined in there.
Right.
Because they're going to go by whatever that number is. And they're really interesting. It's a really interesting map portal, but it is a RAM hog. And I bring it up, but it really slowed down the process. But I'll talk to Don, and maybe we can have that at our next meeting. Because again, I think we'd like to see it imposed in here, and I think that's one of the comments that we have within the staff report. The other thing, because the issue of trees was coming up in there, we wanted to note that, and that is required as part of the petition application, that they identify some significant trees, and those I believe over 4 inches in caliper or more. Those need to be shown more specifically. And then the last thing want to discuss with the commission is, when Birdie Lane was being proposed, we required Birdie Lane to provide us a sidewalk on long acres that extends from Old Bottom all the way north to the cul-de-sac, and then an easement that would allow a potential trail that would connect to this property here, unknowing that this property was going to be coming in, so soon. That easement has been provided, and it stops right here at this corner. What we're asking the petitioner is, now that we have our sidewalk that's been constructed on long acres, is to provide at a minimum, the easement for the trail, and the easement for the trail to hit the multi-purpose trail in the right of way. We'd like to go further than that and ask them to at least build that trail connection in there. We've had that discussion with the petitioner, but then you got to kind of weigh, there's that nexus of the 2 to 3 lots and what that cost of that trail would be, because all of a sudden you're dealing with some significant grading conditions, and you're going to cross some type of ravine in the process to connect to the trail that's somewhere in this area here. They've indicated, of course, a concern about the cost, and that's reasonable. But what we haven't seen is, what are those actual costs? And another option that we would look into, depending on what those cost amounts are, is that would they, on paper, again, access to the trail seems simple, it's flat, in there. But the reality is there's quite a bit of contours, and there's things we have to be considered of ADA, slopes, and things of that nature. Would they put the engineering together and the design, the construction documents for that trail, and then the city can go out to either fund, the construction itself, or look for sources to fund the construction of that trail segment from White Rose to the multi-purpose trail here. I think this is one we'd like to keep, in our pockets for some time in the future. But I think that'd be difficult to try to re-coordinate everybody to get that connection there. It exists in paper, and it exists in, you could walk through there, because that has been dedicated and recorded. The key thing would be, it might be something we would fund in the future as a means to get better connectivity there.
And I gotta think, crossing the culvert, that's off of their property, right?
On here, probably it could be. Not exactly sure. I mean, based on some of the diagrams, and again, it shows it, right there. This is the yellow line is the property ground, so it could be within their property itself.
I just think from a liability standpoint, no one's gonna want, a bridge on their yard that they're gonna be, responsible for. If the bridge was on, the community property.
And that might be another thing. I mean, right now they're showing it as an easement, that they would dedicate the easement, a 10-foot easement wide in there. If it's dedicated as right of way, or public alley. I mean, it's something we would consider too.
Yeah.
They will have utilities along that side, and that's the other thing we have to be cognizant of, that once those are put in place, that. Yeah, it'd be best to design that all at once.
Right. Bless you, Carol. Go ahead, Tim.
Thank you.
Tell you the end of that street, there's no access to get to that multipurpose for anybody on that street, White Rose or Obana. There's no access to get to the multipurpose.
Right, but they're talking about potentially building a bridge.
That's what I'm saying is I think that's very important because you're cutting off that whole subdivision, and nice right now to be able to do that. It's a big thing. Instead of having to walk all the way around
Right.
or through a neighbor's yard that you're not supposed to be going to.
Right. So you're for that.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
for something with
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's
At least
important.
the easement.
Yeah,
you know.
oh, yeah, get it started at least.
Right, right. And I like the idea. I mean, it just definitely improves the whole idea of walkability and connections within the community.
I appreciate that because I don't live over there and I appreciate that.
Feedback.
Yeah, everybody has fences
Yeah.
or there's one lot that you can walk through.
Yeah,
Basically.
I would use it as well.
Yeah.
Tim, is it like a creek back in there that you'd have to?
And
Jump
once you get farther down, I believe it is, there's a creek coming down there, but farther up is a multipurpose where you just walk right across somebody's yard and it's the trails right there.
Okay.
But at that point in time, it's basically a creek when it's.
I think once you get farther down, I would have to look. I've never been so heavy.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Carol.
Carlos, I'm concerned about the floodplain issue. Just from having worked with FEMA on similar issues. I would assume their new requirements are going to be more stringent. Are we, and I don't know if there's a way to really answer this, but could we be, from what you've shown us, it looks like that at least two of the lots are going to be impacted by floodplain. Are we potentially approving something here that's going to cause a problem? I don't know. I don't know if there's a good way to answer this question.
In my opinion, they're not official maps. We know that they've been designed and they've been calculated, but I professionally cannot consider them as official maps. We had a similar issue occur up in Bond Price Terrace, I believe, where, we had a couple of homes that were approved the commission with the knowledge that the floodway was being changed with these revisions and making sure that their elevations, especially their first floor elevation, was above the noted marks in there. That's a little easier because it was, there's a channel that runs through the rear of those properties. These here, again, we're just cognizant that a change is going to be coming, but it's not official yet. The second thing is that there is enough information for them to be able to design to accommodate, to consider how it impacts the two lots, especially the third lot here in there. Again, this is our best guess, but our proportions are way off. Their surveyor can do a better delineation in that process within, the accuracy that FEMA would be looking for to determine what is that the buildability of that area in there. And again, being that they're ahead of SEMA to put this in place, they have the ability to get that adjusted. There is a process for them to go through in there, but we also want to, a couple of things that we're cognizant within our ordinance. You can't change the whole grading within the property to accommodate the lot, but that's not what they're proposing here. And two, they do have to preserve and have a buildable area for each one. So again, I think what you're asking, it's not out of the ordinary of them being a step ahead of the SEMA map and FEMA map process. And those being State Emergency Management Association and the Federal Emergency Management Agency. In there, you know, if you know, I wish they would have moved a little bit faster. Because the city has been in limbo for about 5 years from this point all the way out to, you know, east to I-170 to get this defined.
So Carlos,
Yeah,
there is a procedure if those maps are adopted later and it turns out they are actually in a floodplain that the residents could go through in order to
Correct.
maintain that.
The
property.
resident would then file with the state or the federal emergency management agency what they call a letter of map amendment, and they would the burden is on them to show that their elevations, whether it's their first floor or their basement floor, exceed the height of where they're defining the flood, you know, the flood elevation is at in there. So once that map is set, they don't change them anymore. You actually do a letter, you know, it's an amendment. So there is a process, and as long as that is done before the map takes in place, then they're okay.
If the map is adopted before they do it, they are
Then
out of luck.
then we would be looking at something different. Correct.
Has this area flooded before?
We've had flooding in this area by Dillman Road, especially like that July, August rains last year, but nothing significant. I mean, we're fortunate that we're the highest point in the county. And the majority of the reason is that the narrowness of the culvert. And there sometimes that will get overflowed, or if there is debris that blocks a passageway, it does hurt, but it does, you know, it does, it's like a freeway. It does back up, but then it goes through and goes on in there. I couldn't tell you, and we do have the property owner is here, what has been the most significant amount of water in there. But you can see too that over time, the creek that ran into the middle of the property then back has kind of redefined itself to run parallel with the north property line.
Go ahead.
Forgive me if this was covered before. Go back to that survey view. What's up with maintaining this L shape along the north property here? Was that, I'm assuming there's probably some sort of fiscal reason, but why not extend the North New subdivision property straight up to the property? That might be a question for the petitioner.
Yeah.
So we'll hang on to that one. The other thought I had was the White Rose existing road, it's almost like it was the way it's constructed now, it's almost like it was expecting to have this little cul-de-sac knuckle here. Was that like planned at some point before? It's almost like,
Yeah, it does look like it's fulfilling.
yeah, it
its
looks
life
like they were at
function.
some point expecting this to be developed as part of that
Maybe-
street. I don't know.
Maybe the
It
petitioner.
is interesting, not sure what the history behind it is. I do believe that both of these, White Rose and Bonham Woods or Bonham Forest, and I'm sorry if I got the wrong name, were both private streets. And then in 1985 or so, the city did what they called a neighborhood improvement district, which allowed a lot of private streets to become public at a cost in there, and White Rose chose to do so. In there. So if there was ever an expectation that there would be some additional lots through that, I'm not familiar with the history, and I'm not sure Mr. Costa, the owner, would recall way back on that aspect. The way they're legally set out, it was like this lot was excluded, and would have been continued to be excluded until White Rose became public. Once White Rose became public, now we have jurisdiction over that permits this lot to, petition the city to access onto there. But if it was private, it would be a different story. They'd have to petition the road owners before they could have that considered. Now, I don't know that, and it probably doesn't answer your direct question, but.
Yeah, I just thought it was really interesting to see how, because you don't really see configuration like that
Set up.
Yeah, it's like they're expecting something to be there at some point.
And then that inlet would be relocated further in, and then this would be, that circumference would be finished, so you'd have a bigger turnaround in that area.
So it doesn't look like it has that circle. right there.
It's not existing.
Not yet.
but
Okay, so
It would if a plat was approved.
understood, understood. Okay, is seeing no other further discussion at this point in time, I think it's worthwhile to bring on the petitioner.
Hi, my name is Arthur Cotes and I am the potential buyer of those two lots, the one that's getting developed. So if you have any specific question, first, I want to answer you regarding the future floodplain. Me and Carlos, we reviewed preliminary elevation, which elevation will be in the floodplain and existing grades, the one that they propose now within the building envelope, they're gonna be out of the floodplain plan. If it's gonna be, when they're gonna adopt it, the proposed house will be out of that area,
What about the basement?
including the basement.
Okay, so
And-
surrounding, so you're gonna regrade. that
Well, yeah, because we check, I believe it's like 624 or 624, I believe it's gonna be already out of the future potential floodplain.
Do you know what that elevation is?
624, it's right there.
No. What the elevation is of the,
It's below 624,
do you know what it is?
623, 622.
Okay,
And, we had conversation with Carlos, but Carlos asked us to put more proposed future house. If there's gonna be subject to approve, that will more represent, this house gonna be out of that
good.
plan.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Okay,
And just to be
Go
clear,
ahead, Tim.
I think one of the things that we need to see on the plat is whatever that FEMA elevation will be, and let's say if it's 632 point or 623.4,
Mhm.
that gets plotted. So the commission can see where it would be at, and then where it would be either redesigned or if it's out of the way completely. In there, then it gives us an opportunity to kind of measure the depth of the buildable area to ensure that the house and note, a preliminary plat is allowed to do 2-foot contours as opposed to the 1-foot contours. So keep that in mind, even though that looks like 3 feet like we'd see in a house, that's actually like a 6-foot drop.
Yeah.
Just to have back there.
that's a good point. Go ahead, Jim.
What size house are you proposing for these lots?
That's gonna be like a basement footprint will be around 2,500 square foot, 2,600 square foot. The left one, the right one, the number 2, it's gonna be slightly smaller. That's gonna be probably 1,800 square foot low basement.
No
basement? No, it will be about 1,800 square feet. It's a little bit smaller house because due to the topography,
1-story or 2-story?
it's gonna be 2-story. So 2-story on number 2 is gonna be 1.5 on number 1. That's the plan. No, number 3, sorry.
Okay,
And then Daniel, I think I'd like to know the answer to that too, as well as why did you guys not put that piece of property in lot number 3?
Well, now it's existing, there is water flow creek that goes, from the west side of the property now. Up to that point, there is like a concrete curve that water follow, along that trail. And then from that point, there is just like a natural creek that goes straight along the north side of the property all the way to Dillman.
So where it says existing trees to remain, is that part of the original property?
Yes.
So why isn't that part of number 3? Why is there a strip that just goes across?
Yeah, that narrow strip.
So that the whole creek will be, because that section, continue all the way to Dillman. And engineer suggested just to keep that one as one ownership. And if in the future, who is gonna do anything on that, they can just do, without asking permission on lot number 3.
If that strip isn't usable for anything, possibly the buyer of number 3 eventually doesn't need the extra property. Yeah.
No, but
I mean, I like
You're,
that it's-
you're annexing a strip. I would think it needs, I'm not sure, I refer to Carlos probably, but I would think that that should be part of number 3. If not, you're kind of annexing that little strip over there.
who's annexing?
Well, I mean, it's just, they have to take care of it. Then number 1 has to take care of that strip that's going next to this neighbor's house.
Right.
Instead of it being part of that lot. I'm not sure why you wouldn't cut that off and make that part of 3.
Unless the owner wants to maintain control of the creek and the existing trees along it. Is the owner here? Oh, okay. Good, good. Yeah, maybe you could come up and answer that. And remember to state your name and address. That'd be great.
My name's Ed Coslin. My wife Fran, we live at 595 Dealman Road.
I think our question is why that strip of property is not going to be on lot number 3, but will remain with lot number 1.
I'm going to give you an answer, but I'm not sure it's going to answer your question.
Okay.
So here's the answer. Here's the answer. The answer is Mr. Faulkner, the engineer from Sterling, wanted there to be 3 lots.
Yeah.
But he couldn't do it with the floodplain. So that's the only answer I can give you. That's why there are 2 lots, they're not 3. He tried his best to get 3 lots. But the topography, Carlos, wouldn't allow us to do 3 lots. Is that it? I'm sorry?
I wouldn't doubt that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's answering.
It doesn't answer the exact question of why you want to maintain control over the creek along that north side.
Okay. You're gonna have to visualize this with me.
Yeah.
There's a box culvert that goes from Stacy Park Reservoir to our property. And then it's the creek. And the creek is about 6 feet below what we've come to call the island. Okay, so our house is on the top.
Yeah.
And when Carlos talked about the flooding, there's never been flooding on White Rose Lane. There's no flooding close to White Rose Lane. The creek along the north end of our property takes all of the water under the bridge. And the land is about 6 feet above the creek bed. So you have the box culvert that ends at our property line.
Mhm.
And then there's the creek that
So-
goes straight through to the other side of Dealman. The other part of the creek that Carlos was talking about doesn't flood. It's 40 feet below our home and it doesn't get anywhere near the lots we're trying to sell.
Okay. Is there a reason why you don't want property, the north property to extend all the way, to include the creek?
We wanted our house to be a house in the woods after this process happened. So what you're talking to me about, I don't even understand.
Okay.
In other words, you're asking me this question, why do we want X? And I didn't know we wanted X.
Well, you're getting next.
Is that a good thing? I don't know if it's a good
You
thing.
might have to maintain more of that creek that's not really part of.
And this is something, because I was listening carefully to the tree folks. in 2008, we wanted to develop, and Carlos knows about this, 12 townhouses that went from Dealman Road to White Rose Lane. Before we started, Mayor Springer already put her number in to buy one of them. And so, and so this, and that was a recession.
Yeah.
And so that would all go from the front all the way around the property. We had an arborist, an independent arborist, come look at all our property. And she said very kindly, well, let me just stay with what I was going to say. She said very kindly, I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but a lot of these trees are worthless. Last year, we took down an 80-foot tree.
Yeah, wow.
That was at the end of the property. And our big fear, those people that live right next door, I think they have 3 or 4 kids. So we took down an 80-foot tree. So I know as of 2008, the trees on the island area aren't in good shape at all.
Right.
We have a 200-year-old tree that you're more than willing to come look at, which is right at the edge of our house.
Wow.
With those giant knobs on them. And we took off all the limbs that could fall on the house. It's 6 feet from the house. So the worst that could happen is it could lean on the house, but it couldn't fall on the house. So the trees around our house are that's a 200-year-old tree right next to our house. And the trees around the front, but the area we're talking about in terms of trees.
Well, I think you might want to just look at the plat and just verify with yourself whether you want to maintain that ownership over along that creek.
Are you clear what we're talking about?
Not exactly.
That's what I'm.
Yeah,
I think
so
we're missing.
I'm not exactly.
It might help to
Yeah,
look at
yeah.
that.
So
I'm sure. It's that right there.
we're saying extend the line up, so 3 goes all the way to the second black line with the top.
And is the
So you
second black
square
line, what's the second black line, the creek?
Property line.
Well,
Creek is probably within the property.
the creek is within the
You'd be
property line.
responsible for mowing or cleaning up behind.
That
Lot
person's
3.
house.
We haven't cleaned it up in 42 years.
True, but you know.
It's real forest preserve. When I bought the property, I said to the realtor, who's going to rake leaves? And he looked at me and he said, this is a forest preserve. You don't rake leaves here. So this is not, it's not an
But the
issue
new
that's,
house- the new house that will be next to you may ask, who's gonna clean these
Yeah.
leaves? And it's gonna end up being you, because you're the owner.
okay. I mean, we would very much like you to approve the 2 lots. This is over my head. What you're suggesting is, well, I'm not sure what you're suggesting.
And
That
I'm
we should
not sure
change the
that-
plat and extend our, I don't know what you're asking.
I'm not sure that we're actually trying to convince you to do anything. I think more than
It's in my
anything,
best interest. I think you're trying to tell me something in my
no,
best.
more than
interest.
anything, we're just wondering why the sort of narrow strip of land
In-
that stretches all the way over
In the
there.
conditions in
Mr.
chapter
Mr.
4.
Chairman?
It does,
There's,
it does push that that strange angles and shapes should be avoided.
Yeah.
And it's something we can take a look at. I don't see, unless there's an impact to the land area or the way the setbacks are calculated, because you remember, we go by percentages, so that can be impacting the width or depth.
Right.
And then kind of make it more difficult to try to develop on the property, but we can look into that with the petitioner. I don't see a reason why 3 can't go in there. Another thing, I can talk with the Public Works and Parks Department. It might be, that strip, if it ran parallel, like the city may have interest in having the ravine under its control. I don't want to use control, but under its jurisdiction.
Yeah.
For the purposes of stormwater mitigation, down
That's
the
a good
future,
point.
if it doesn't impact, if it doesn't have any adverse impact to you and your property. I don't think it will, but it might be something that the city
well,
would
then
want to
we'd have to be
consider.
responsible. Then, right? Then we'd have to be responsible. I understand.
Okay.
So that it will be something we can talk with the developer for prior to the
Good,
next meeting. In there, there's a couple of things I think, just to make clear that before an action can be taken, that need to be resolved for the commission. One would be this leg aspect in there. We need to know the elevation, the precise elevation of the flood line. So it can be illustrated and how it's being modified on the plat. Two, they do have to conduct a tree inventory in there, and that has not been provided. And then we're looking for, again, on paper, we would like to see that trail connected. But we recognize from the developer that it may be cost prohibitive. Then show us those costs, because maybe we'll consider, them doing the engineering work for that in lieu.
Show me the creek. Where's the creek on the other side of the
Here,
flat line?
here is the trail area, and then here's your property.
Okay, but the
And-
creek is inside our property.
That is correct. It's right in this area here.
In that
And-
area,
and
it's
actually-
in between 614, the two
Correct.
614s.
The creek kind of runs right here.
Yeah.
See, that's what I thought, because that's my confusion. It's the creek.
Yeah.
In other words, this area you're talking about are maintaining, I think, is the creek.
It's not about maintaining, is that the creek, it does appear that the creek is fully within your current property.
I think that's true.
And there's two things. One is there is no need for this lot here, and I don't know if they'll let me change colors. Bear with me on these colors here, but lot 3, the boundaries of lot 3 are right here. And then turn this way.
Mhm.
So you maintain this strip in here. We want to avoid that in planning. We'd like straight right angles, so we'd like to get either this line run all the way down here. The other thing is that maybe we would like to talk to you about you dedicating the creek over to the city.
If he maintains ownership.
No, it might be something that we would.
Well, we would be maintaining ownership.
No, my question is, if this gentleman maintains ownership, we were gonna ask that question, or if this gentleman ends up.
I think in the end of the day, either I'd have to check with the powers above me and on the side, if we would have interest of taking that as a dedication. So we would maintain the maintenance, or I can tell you right now, you're gonna want an easement.
Yeah.
Because I think there are merits to consider, to be able to utilize or control that ravine for flood mitigation if it ever occurs in the future.
And the easement would run,
Parallel with that north property line. Pretty much the length of the creek.
this.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm understanding. I do understand.
And you can write down, send him the requirements
Yes.
of what we're gonna need.
And I need to talk with both Parks and the Public Works Director
Yeah,
on that.
Okay,
very good. Carol, I think you had a question.
I think Carlos explained what I was going to attempt to explain to the
Good, good, good.
petitioner.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna pause a little bit just in case he needs to. Was there anything that else?
The wife said.
You know, yeah, I would love you to come look at the property. There's nothing like.
I'm ready.
Yeah, yeah.
Just call. You're welcome to come by and see the 200-year-old tree that's not moving.
Fantastic. All
Any
right,
I want to
questions?
see
Yeah.
that tree.
You're welcome.
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, so we're not gonna be doing any action on
No,
this.
I do want to hear from the petitioner regarding the access point, and that's something we've kind of started discussing in there and getting your overall thoughts. I think what I've gotten from you is that you'd prefer not to construct it in there, and and from the city side, we'd like to see it done. But would you consider Sterling putting together the
Please, I can't hear you.
The-
Turn the mic on, sir. I'm sorry.
Excuse me. I will talk to Sterling and ask them to give us the proposal, what it's gonna take to construct that and calculate the cost of it, and if it's reasonable,
And if not, I think we would be interested in, again, maybe you putting the specifications together and then we construct it.
Sure.
Because we have various means to do that. And it may be something that doesn't happen to another 5 years. But that that puts us in a position shovel ready. You know, that's the goal.
And Carlos, I think that along that north side of the property, like you said, if like the city will take the ownership or take care of that section, because I walked that property several times myself with engineers. And I think sooner or later that creek will need some maintenance to do it. And it's going to be better off that if, you know, who's going to do from the beginning, they will just going to do all the way to the end where that concrete, I don't know, it's like a swale ends.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, at this point in time, is there any public comments related to this agenda item? Seeing none out in the audience, Carlos, should we check online?
Okay, if there's anybody that'd like to speak in regards to this petition, please show a hand. And there are none, sir.
Okay, seeing none, thank you, everybody. Good discussion on that item. We're gonna move on to item 6, other business. And I believe, actually, we have item D, but I believe that's being
That's being
deferred.
deferred.
And so then we'll move on to item 6A, and I believe that's also being deferred.
Correct.
Okay, so we're moving on to item B, which is meeting minutes.
All right, and we don't have any minutes for distribution for tonight's meeting.
Okay,
So-
good. So we'll move on to reports. Carlos?
All right, couple of reports to bring to the commission. One is that the council
Carlos,
offered.
I'm gonna pause you real quick.
Mhm.
If you guys don't mind, if you could just. We need more information. Yes. And Carlos is gonna send an email or some information to kind of explain that. Okay, but if you guys don't mind, just if you can, you know, talk out in the hallway, that'd be great. Thank you. Go ahead, Carlos. Sorry about that.
At the council meeting Tuesday night, the city council noted they extended an offer to Jennifer Yackley to be the city's next city manager. Ms. Yackley, a fellow planner by trade too. It's exciting. Worked with the city of Rock Hill as an administrator there. I think it was over 8 years, and she's got over 20 years of planning experience. I knew her in my early days as a planner too. So that's exciting in there, and I think looking forward to working with her on that. The other thing that happened at the council meeting, sorry to steal the Chairman Pro Tem's thunder, the special use permit for 9270 Olive Boulevard, which was the proposed dispensary for Sunrise, failed. The motion failed 1-4, and therefore the bill is dead. We went through the whole hearing process. On my end, somewhat surprised in there, and I'll let the commission know in terms of the process, because the process worked like it's supposed to, and the council is well within its authority to do how it does. But what happens is, and just going back to the strategic plan and the comprehensive plan, is then, you know, people lose faith in the process or in the system. So when we engage with developers, contractors, you know, they're looking for some type of you know, trying to limit their risk. And when we try to establish standards as best as possible, like we have in the guidelines, and then we have that are in the code, so that as long as they follow that process, you know, there's no they're harsh words in the planning world, but you're trying not to be arbitrary or capricious. You know, there's a consistency on how that thought process works, and this went through that. If there were concerns of the council that, let's say, lots under 20,000 square feet just shouldn't have dispensaries, that's okay. But then that's something that's good for staff and us that are out there in the front lines as we engage with somebody to say, you know, wait a minute, this lot's just too small. But, you know, then, and it was a newly adopted ordinance, so maybe, you know, there's a lot of unknowns on how things happen. But, you know, with the result of this, you know, it puts into question is, you know, should there be a minimum lot size standard that should be considered? If it can't work at that site, does that mean any site similar in size is going to have the same type of limitations? Two, you know, should dispensaries have a different category of parking as opposed to retail? You know, that was some of the components. And again, they're reasonable, but you know, those are things we should now consider to bring us back into play, that, you know, that we do have some consistency in place. And then, you know, the other issue was the traffic. And that's the one I'm not sure. I don't believe that the council's sole decision was based on traffic, but you know, relocation of a dispensary to anywhere along the corridor or any other retail use is going to have an impact on traffic. And that's, you know, that's part of the cycle. And, you know, with our strategic plan, our concept management plan for all of Boulevard corridor, I mean, the best we can do is have good planning in place to manage, you know, traffic circulation and access. And we did for this site. We even had a cross access easement next door. So, you know, you build on these and you sell, you know, the process on, you know, this is why we did all that, and that's why we're here. And then for it to fail, because if we would have known, like there should be a threshold for the lot size, you know, we could have saved a lot of time and effort, you know, earlier on. But again, I mean, the process worked like it should. You know, I'm fine with the council decision, but I think it brings it back to here of whether, hey, you know, so it doesn't happen again, should we start looking or thinking about some of these conditions? Because it is a special permit. A special permit usually has additional conditions in place. Just like if you were going to do a fast food, you need 80,000 square feet. So if you have a lot that's 70,000 square feet, you're going to come talk to me. It's easy for me to tell you, you know, you have to have 80,000 in there. And as opposed to like a situation like this, again, you know, there wasn't a defined standard of what's acceptable and what isn't. And it was also our first petition for that process. But here's an opportunity to improve or kind of do a hogwash. I think it's a Barb's term used to use to learn from this and establish something so it doesn't happen again, or puts us in a better position, because we start to lose some credibility in there, whether it's valid or not. You know, people won't read the whole story. They'll just pick up on, you know, the city disapproved the dispensary, so it's now like all of it anti-dispensary. It's hard to say it is, given the way the votes went in support of Amendment 2 and Amendment 3. So again, maybe it wasn't right for this type of lot, not the location. I mean, I can understand, but that, you know, lots of this size just aren't viable for a use. We just don't know how intense it's going to be. So
That's, I think, the
Mr.
key.
Chairman?
Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, cause I was looking at it a little differently. My concern is not so much with the dispensary as a use, but rather this particular lot and size. And maybe another way to look at it is that if there are this lot or other lots within the our Olive Street corridor that are similarly situated, that maybe we need to think about a zoning provision that protects them in certain ways, so that we don't experience this again with a different retail use on that small lot.
Well, I think that's what Carlos is talking about, is trying to go to a minimum lot size, kind of similar to fast food. Whether
Well-
that truly matches the same or not. I think right now, the big crux of what we're dealing with is we don't really know the volume.
Yeah, I think we're kind of saying the same thing, but not necessarily. And there is a difference. Carlos was talking a lot about the special permit, and And that's a different perspective. I was looking at it more from, not from the special permit, but rather any retail use, not just a dispensary. And my concern was any small lot up and down Olive that is similarly situated. Perhaps those lots need to be better protected within our zoning ordinance, rather than looking at specific criteria for dispensaries.
When you say protected, what do you mean by protected?
Say traffic. Traffic was one of the major problems on the site, for instance, retail traffic in and out of a small lot without impacting the neighborhood. And I haven't really looked at any specific other lots up and down Olive. I've done planning work up and down Olive to analyze it. That's not my job, but I'm wondering if part of the problem is the way our zoning ordinance reads and not just the special permit. So it's a little different perspective.
No, I see where you're going, and I think that's interesting, but I also think it depends on the use, because a small lot that's used as kind of just an office.
Exactly. Yes, it depends on the use.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I think we need to pay closer attention to.
Yeah, I agree, Carol.
Yeah.
Tim, you had a comment?
I just want to say, I don't think it's about the lot size, actually. It's about the parking spots. The lot size, I mean, a dispensary could be the size of that closet if you wanted to. And they could have, if they wanted to, they could have knocked down that building and built a small building and had plenty of parking there. And,
Yeah, good point.
you know, I think we're going the wrong direction. We need to identify how many spots are needed for that special permit, and that's what would save all this stuff.
Yeah, it's an interesting
Number of spots per square foot or something.
No, well, it could be based on square foot. I know that's part of it too, but I would think it's more based on the retail, because a dispensary is really gonna have, it's gonna be based on how many parking spots. I mean, they're gonna do as many as they can, right? They're gonna, smaller,
Go in and out.
So how would you base it on volume of business?
I think it's gotta be more, because they're never gonna be able to prove their volume of business ahead of time, so it's gotta be based on that we say, hey, the dispensary, you have to have so many parking spots. Just like a retail location,
But
right,
that's
it has
based
so
on-
many parking spots.
That's based on square footage.
A sliding scale though,
Yeah.
square footage.
Yeah, yeah.
Very sliding of that part.
Yeah. Well, I think we can further look into that. I think we're not going to solve it tonight. But I think Carol's point too, about some of the other small buildings, especially up on makes sense too, so I think we can look at that further. Or I should say Dawn will look at that further. All right, good. Carlos, we didn't mean to cut your report
No
off,
problem.
so go ahead.
For our next meeting, again, we won't have a meeting on July 6th. But we will on July 20th. Right now, we've been working with petitioners on the agenda, so we don't anticipate a backlog of items, but we'll have a new staff planner. Jack Carswell will be joining our team. Excuse me. In there, so hopefully we'll be back to full staff and be able to get ahead in the volume of permits and reviews that we're doing. So
In meeting minutes.
yes, yes, absolutely, and we're actually doing good with Jennifer assisting us in that process too.
Good.
That second Wednesday in July, I and my department will be the host for Coffee in the Mirror to talk about Planning 101 in there. So we'll keep that in mind. Again, our July 6th meeting will be canceled, and anticipate a lot of traffic. We saw the light switch over on Olive and Price, so now they are now on the new signals in there. That still hasn't happened at Olive and Hilltop. that would be the next one, but there's still a pole sitting right in the middle that needs to get removed in there. And it's amazing on public utilities and trying to get things moved.
Work on their own schedule.
What else?
There's still a pole at the southeast corner of Hilltop and Olive.
And that's all we're waiting on.
I couldn't
utilities?
tell you. I couldn't tell you. It doesn't seem, I'd be lying if I
Yeah.
said yes. But anyway, they had to turn off the signals and traffic was pretty well backed up there. Now, tomorrow, we're gonna experience it here on Dealman as they're gonna start milling the road on our side between the railroad tracks and Olive. And then they'll probably do paving on Monday. So if you're coming to the city center, anticipate some delays.
So they're not gonna start at Page,
They already started on Page.
Oh, they did, okay.
They'll probably be doing the paving over there and the milling over here. And all that, so. And that, we have a petition coming in. Well, there are two things at the Plant Haven Center, which still hasn't received a formal name yet. Which they had the Plant Haven Nursery and Gift Shop and the UPS store. We received an application for a hair salon facility to be one of the tenants in there. And then on July 20th, I'll have a petition before you for a special permit request for a microbrewery and diner. That's proposed on the eastern, excuse me, the western end of the facility. So that'll be before the commission. In there, we have the public, the ordinance first readings for the paddle and pickleball court and the wine merchant going before the council in 2 weeks in there. And then I'll be out the next 2 weeks on vacation. So if there's any questions, email is the best method. So. Oh, and we'll follow up with Mr. Freeman. We've talked to him in there and we've been trying to get those issues addressed. Appreciate the patience of Mr. Lapp in there, and he has been patient in there, but he is correct in there, and we do anticipate or will require that they put some landscaping back there.
And are you gonna be out there when he does with his?
I may not be able to make it next week, but I'll have one of the inspectors there with him.
That'll be good.
in there. And then I'm supposed to follow up with Freeman and some of the other owners about that lot on the north end lot number 8 in there. So.
Yeah, I mean, he really needs to step up, and do the right thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Missy?
All right, I appreciate that because if you didn't go down that conversation with regard to Mr. Freeman and his commitments, I would have been talking to you tomorrow. Carlos really did a great job of summarizing things. I know that there's a family here that would love to have a hearing from citizens part 2 to give you their spiel about the bamboo, because you're really learning about 2 families that just are having this difficulty of the bamboo issue. So I don't know if they want to stay afterwards and speak with you. I would be more than willing to give them 30 seconds of my time. Jennifer Yackley will be starting August 7th. And, forgive me, but, when people want to come and ask you, can we do this on the board with you? Council really feels that city managers should be involved just a little bit. So I went out and I talked and I explained, look, we appreciate what you want to bring to this body, but there is a process. And given that it's not an urgent issue and that we are all mindful of the trees, and I am the one that asked that other young lady to come and speak. She had, sent me information, communicated with Carlos, and then I encouraged her, come to this meeting and express yourself. She did a great job. But when it comes to, hey, we want to come and present to you, to me, that has to go through the city manager. I understand, but she's coming, and I want that process and I want that connection, starting with the city manager versus starting with a board. Okay, guys, have a great opportunity of time off. You are much appreciated. We've got a lot to do. The new guys on the commission, I appreciate you. I am really, really happy with what I learned from you and what you do battle and fight for on behalf of the city. So much appreciated. Have a great time. It is time to hammer the hammer and go home.
Okay, we'll call the meeting adjourned at 9:22.
Thank you, Chairman.
Night.
Good
Good night, Carol. Thanks for zooming in.